D-Day, the 6th of June 1944, the most famous invasion in history. 5 beaches along the Normandy coast would be stormed by Allied troops, 2 British, 2 American and 1 Canadian. The names of these beaches have become immortalized: Gold, Utah, Juno, Sword. But the 5th, Omaha, remains the most contentious. The American landing at Omaha Beach, famously immortalized in Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan, has come to represent D-Day in the minds of many people. But in reality, Omaha Beach was the exception to the rule, the one beach out of the 5 where serious and determined resistance was encountered, with horrific results for the landing troops. Casualties on the other beaches were bad enough. On the British beaches, Sword and Gold, 2,000 men were killed, wounded or missing. 340 Canadians fell at Juno Beach and 197 Americans at Utah. But at those beaches, the landings were never in doubt. On Omaha, the landing was almost defeated by the German defenders. Among the American GIs who stormed ashore at Omaha on the 6th of June 1944 was a small British unit that has been almost erased from the story of the landing that so many people take as fact. Who were they? They went by the rather innocuous name of 21 Base Defense Sector and were part of a 2-unit outfit that was destined to play a critical part in the assault on Normandy. They were a team of specialists whose job was to coordinate air defense over the beaches. Drawn primarily from the Royal Air Force, 21 BDS operated ground control intercept capabilities in Normandy, in particular guarding against German aerial attacks. Airborne radars of the period lacked the necessary range, so it was a case of boots on the ground, or in this case on the sand. The RAF radar technicians and specialists would have to land alongside the American infantry with their vehicles and radars and establish operations as quickly as possible on D-Day itself. Converted landing ships tank would loiter off the beaches itself to land 2 mobile units with the troops, one in the British beachhead and one in the American. The RAF unit that would storm ashore at Omaha was equipped with the Air Ministry Experimental Station, or AMES Type 15 GCI system, plus AMES height-finding equipment, a planned position station, a mobile radar, and a large communications element. Attached to 21 BDS was one company of 16th Air Formation Signals from the British Army's Royal Corps of Signals, plus an RAF doctor and a padre. The signaler's job was to establish the main trunk telephone network for deployment of RAF elements in Normandy, using jeeps and motorcycles. In total, the British force landing on Omaha Beach had 27 vehicles, ranging from the big radar trucks to Willys jeeps. The RAF unit had spent a year training for D-Day. They were armed with Sten submachine guns, Lee Enfield rifles and Webley revolvers, and were fully prepared for a wet shod landing, that is, the vehicles waterproofed to drive down the ramp of an LCT into water 3.5 feet deep and onto the beach. Each man was given an American assault respirator worn on the chest in a waterproof bag, which would ultimately prove its worth as a life preserver, and 48 hours of supplies, including, strangely, 3 condoms, plus maps of the Omaha Beach showing German fortifications and machine gun positions. The plan was for 21 BDS to land mid-morning on the 6th of June, just after the first assault waves of US infantry. The tide would have covered most of the shingle where it was difficult for vehicles to move, and it was envisioned that the LCTs would land the British vehicles on a beach completely in American hands, with the beach exits open. That was the plan anyway. They were supposed to land opposite a point codenamed E3 by the Americans, the Colville Draw on the eastern side of Omaha Beach. The unit's D-Day objective was 8 miles west of Omaha at Saint-Pierre-du-Mont, near Point du Hoc, enabling the British radars to cover both Omaha and Utah beaches. But everyone had woefully underestimated the level of German resistance that they would face. Omaha Beach was a prepared killing ground. On the bluffs overlooking the beach were trenches and machine gun nests, while behind the beach were artillery batteries zeroed in on the beaches. The draws leading off the beach were heavily defended. There were concrete emplacements, pillboxes, machine gun and mortar positions, and extensive trench works fronted by minefields and barbed wire. Omaha Beach was defended by 2,500 troops, 2 battalions from the experienced German 352nd Infantry Division and a battalion of low-quality Eastern European troops. The Allies planned to heavily bombard and bomb Omaha Beach and the inshore defences before the landings commenced. At dawn on the 6th of June, bombers attacked from 18,000 feet, most missing their targets and hitting farmland inshore.
Wave after wave, they roar overhead above the Armada. In the ships of the invasion fleet, the men can hear the steady pounding of their fire on the enemy's positions, and they wonder hopefully if anything can be left alive on shore.
Now the Naval Task Force moved in and began to bombard the beach defences more accurately. As the naval bombardment eases off, German troops emerge from cover to man their positions.
Feindliche Schiffe in Sicht. Achtung! Feindliche Invasionsflotte in Sicht. Die Invasion, die wir erwartet haben. Wir werden sie ins Meer zurückwerfen. Nicht schießen, bis das Signal gegeben ist.
Swimming Sherman tanks were launched, but too far from the beach and most sank in the choppy conditions. The naval bombardment largely failed to significantly dent the German defences, which stood to repel the waves of landing craft heading for shore. Many of the landing craft were blown off course and landed their troops in the wrong places.
They cannot yet see. They rock toward land. H hour.
Under ferocious artillery, mortar, machine gun and rifle fire, American units were cut to pieces, crossing from the waterline to the shingle bank. None of the vital draws was captured. A second wave was then landed and was also shot to pieces, its men and vehicles adding to the chaos ashore. Fearful of a strong Luftwaffe response to the landing, commanders wanted 21 BDS ashore as fast as possible. At 11:30 hours, the little flotilla of 3 Royal Navy LSTs moved towards Omaha Beach while the slaughter continued ashore. but they were called off when it was obvious that they couldn't get 27 vehicles onto the beach under such horrendous conditions. By now, command and control ashore had completely broken down. Hardly any radios survived the initial landings. General Omar Bradley, commanding offshore, considered abandoning Omaha Beach and putting the remainder of the troops ashore at Utah and Gold Beaches. But that would have meant abandoning those Americans already on Omaha and unsettling the entire Operation Overlord plan. But in the meantime, American troops ashore began to fight back in small groups, some capturing points along the bluffs, then fanning out to deal with the heavily defended draws. Naval shelling also continued against German shore batteries. The German opposition still remained ferocious. The decision was quickly taken to land 21 BDS, who were suffering badly with seasickness. Instead of the original landing area near the Colville Draw, they found themselves off the Dog Red sector, near D3 Draw at Les Moulins, the most heavily defended part of Omaha Beach. The beach was still under German artillery fire. American vehicles, many hit and burning, were lined up, unable to get off the beach. But just after 1700 hours, the British LCT's ramps went down, and 21 BDS stormed ashore onto a beach littered with bodies, equipment and tanks. Some of the British vehicles drove into submerged bomb craters, the crews drowning. Some swam and waded ashore after abandoning their vehicles. Of the 27 vehicles that drove off the 3 LCTs, only 8 actually made it to the beach. It was complete chaos. The RAF and Royal Signals personnel, under heavy fire, struggled to the sea wall. Along the way, the unwounded retrieved many wounded men, both British and American, from the beach and dragged them to cover. German mortar and machine gun fire was still flaying this sector of the beach. Those vehicles that survived the landing were soon targeted by the Germans. Squadron leader Victor Harrison had a foot blown off, while Flight Lieutenant Douglas Highfield was trying to assist the wounded. He dived on top of a wounded man as a shell came roaring in and was killed. Several other 21 BDS men were killed or grimly wounded in the chaos. Many American wounded were lying about since landing 12 hours earlier, and the RAF doctor did what he could as no US medical units were still on the beach. Padre Harding spent the whole time moving from man to man, comforting the wounded and giving the last rites to the dying and the dead. A way off the beach for the vehicles was eventually created by an armoured bulldozer that removed part of the bank under fire. Les Moulins Draw was open. Moving forward, what remained of 21 BDS found an abandoned house and started to organise the movement of their vehicles and personnel off the beach. Soon, 21 BDS had 60 wounded Americans and Brits in its care, still under sporadic German shelling, the doctor and the padre doing what they could for them. Flight Sergeant Muir Adair, a 21 BDS senior non-commissioned officer, became separated from his unit, and by seniority of rank, found himself in command of a ragtag assortment of US Rangers and sailors who had lost their own commanders. Having lost his Sten gun in the landing, he armed himself with an abandoned M1 carbine and led his odds and sods off the beach under heavy fire, fighting German soldiers in a network of trenches, losing 4 of his own men killed. They eventually found a Ranger lieutenant and more US soldiers. Fighting continued into the 7th of June. By mid-morning, the beach was again under German artillery fire. 21 BDS moved 3/4 of a mile inland, making contact with US command. The unit's medical officer continued to care for 16 wounded American soldiers, while US orderlies arrived to assist with more cases. Dr. Rycroft would receive the Military Cross for treating 21 BDS wounded and 76 US casualties on the 6th and 7th of June. The unit's technical officers worked tirelessly to move vehicles and equipment off the beach and salvage what they could from the wrecks, and by the 9th of June the radar was operational. 21 BDS and the attached 16th Air Formation Signals lost 1 officer and 9 other ranks killed on D-Day. 1 more subsequently died of his wounds. Many others were wounded. In fact, 25% of 21st BDS became casualties. 3 more military crosses and 2 military medals were awarded to the RAF contingent for their actions on D-Day. Flight Sergeant Adair received the French Croix de Guerre for his efforts in leading his motley collection of Americans. The British contingent's losses were just a small part of the 2,400 American casualties suffered on Omaha Beach. A small memorial to the British losses stands today above the beach. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share. You can also visit my new audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. And also, if you would like, help support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.